Zilla Fatu is officially coming to WWE. Roman Reigns has two massive Night of Champions opponents on the horizon, and the Bloodline just got its most dangerous upgrade. The first family is growing, not gradually, not through the slow recruitment process that the Bloodline's previous membership expansions have produced, but with the specific urgency of a champion who has assessed the current competitive landscape. The Seth Rollins Dark Promise, the Solo Psycho war building towards Night of Champions, the Abarfimi SummerSlam declaration, the entire simultaneous multi-front pressure of the most contested championship reign of his post-WrestleMania career, and concluded that the institutional infrastructure around the World Heavyweight Championship requires its most formidable possible configuration before the summer's biggest competitive challenges arrive. Zilla Fatu has been spotted backstage. The signing rumors have graduated to the specific, credible category of backstage sightings, the professional wrestling reporting development that most reliably precedes an actual debut. Not speculation, not the hopeful analytical projection of people who have been following Zilla's competitive trajectory and want to see the most dramatically appropriate debut timing fulfilled. Backstage sightings in WWE, which means the debut is not a matter of if but a matter of when. And the when, according to everything the current landscape is building towards, appears to be before Night of Champions. Welcome to Wrestling Stands, and the Bloodline's most anticipated debut just moved from rumor to imminent reality. Quick favor before we get into it: if you enjoy this kind of content, please smash that like button and hit subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It's totally free for you, but it means the world to us and helps the channel grow. Already subscribed? You are absolutely brilliant, thank you so much. Right then, let's get into it. Let us begin with Zilla Fatu and what his arrival means for the first family's current configuration. Because the timing of this debut, arriving in the specific, post-clash in Italy, post-Seth Rollins Dark Promise, pre-Night of Champions window, is not incidental to its significance. It is central to it. The first family that Roman assembled in the post-WrestleMania period has been its most comprehensively pressured version in the weeks following Clash in Italy. Seth Rollins' Dark Promise communicates that the most analytically formidable member has reached a breaking point, that Roman's backstage attack accelerated rather than resolved. Jacob Fatu's corridor acknowledgement carries the pressurized instability of compelled submission rather than genuine conversion, the enforcer whose loyalty was produced by competitive defeat rather than authentic alignment, and whose all-gas no-brakes philosophy does not disappear simply because the table survived the most recent assault. The Usos' internal dynamic, with Jimmy's specific competitive grievances having been identified and engaged by Rollins, is operating at its most complicated since the OG Bloodline's return. Zilla Fatu entering this environment is not just an addition of competitive resource. It is the most significant potential stabilization of an unstable faction configuration that the current landscape can produce. Because Zilla carries a specific quality that none of the existing first family members provides, the combination of an OI family legitimacy, competitive physical gifts that the son of Umaga inevitably brings, and the specific, unresolved loyalty question that has been the most productive narrative ambiguity of the Bloodline saga's current chapter. Is Zilla genuinely Roman's? Or is the long-game theory that his new Bloodline alignment is the most patient possible approach to eventually standing with his brother Jacob, the accurate reading of a debut whose true allegiance will only be revealed at the moment of maximum dramatic impact? The backstage sightings do not answer that question. They make it more urgent. Because a Zilla Fatu who is physically present at WWE events is a Zilla Fatu who is operating in the same spaces as Roman, as Jacob, as the Usos, as Seth Rollins and his Dark Promise. The question of whose side he is actually on stops being theoretical at the moment he walks through the curtain. Night of Champions, Roman Reigns' potential match, and the two opponents whose programs with the tribal chief and his faction have created the most credible and the most dramatically loaded championship collision possibilities for the premium live event. Solo Psycho first. Because the Solo and Roman dynamic is the Bloodline saga's most historically significant unresolved thread, the fracture between the tribal chief's established authority and the alternative power structure that the former new Bloodline leader assembled in competition with Roman's first family. Neither Solo Psycho nor any member of his faction qualifying for King of the Ring, the competitive failure that removes the tournament pathway to a championship opportunity, creates the specific circumstances under which a direct challenge to Roman becomes Solo's most logical and most dramatically appropriate competitive avenue. The Roman vs. Solo war has been signaled since the clash in Italy. Pointed finger Roman, standing in the ring with the first family assembled around him and the Jacob Fatu acknowledgement freshly extracted. directing his attention at Solo Sikoa and Tonga Loa with the specific, declarative certainty of a champion whose institutional housecleaning has not yet reached its final chapter. Team Roman vs. Team Solo at Night of Champions is the most comprehensively competitive and the most personally loaded version of the family war that the Bloodline saga's current chapter has been building towards. But Night of Champions is not exclusively a championship match event. The format accommodates multiple significant competitive showdowns across the card. The Roman Championship defense being one of them, with Solo as the challenger, is the most narratively satisfying version of the Night of Champions main event available to the current landscape. LA Knight, the second potential opponent, and the specific, SmackDown qualifying match pathway that the analysis correctly identifies as the most likely mechanism through which an LA Knight and Roman Reigns championship collision at Night of Champions becomes possible. LA Knight's ongoing friction with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, the backstage arguments, the Adam Pearce confrontations, the repeated WWE hints at a championship program that has been building in the background of the more immediately prominent storylines, is the competitive relationship that the SmackDown qualifying match context is positioning to escalate most directly. The scenario is elegantly constructed: Jey Uso vs. LA Knight for a King of the Ring qualifying spot. Bloodline interference, potentially Jimmy Uso, potentially another faction member, costs LA Knight the opportunity. Knight's response to that denial, delivered through the most direct available competitive channel on Raw, is the championship challenge to Roman Reigns that transforms the Night of Champions card's championship picture in the most crowd-pleasing direction available. The LA Knight and Roman Reigns dynamic carries the specific quality that the most entertaining championship programs provide: the crowd's investment in a challenger who combines genuine competitive credibility with the natural, magnetic charisma that connects with arenas in the specific way that forces WWE to acknowledge the program's potential regardless of where the analytical hierarchy places it. Knight has been generating the specific kind of loud, consistent, emotionally invested audience response that cannot be ignored indefinitely when the championship picture requires its next significant challenger. If the qualifying match produces Bloodline interference and Knight's elimination, the challenge follows. If Knight wins the qualifier, his King of the Ring pathway takes priority and the Roman program develops on a different timeline. The SmackDown outcome is the branching point that determines Night of Champions' shape. The Night of Champions analytical picture with Zilla Fatu's imminent debut included is the most complete and the most dramatically loaded version of the premium live event's possible card. Because Zilla's presence, regardless of which opponent ultimately faces Roman for the championship, adds the most significant variable to the Bloodline's competitive configuration at Night of Champions. If Solo Sikoa is Roman's Night of Champions opponent, Zilla Fatu's debut becomes the most dramatically impactful possible Team Roman addition, the physical complement to Jacob Fatu's enforcer positioning that gives the first family its most comprehensive lineup for the family war's most significant competitive expression. Team Roman with Zilla is the most formidably assembled version of the Tribal Chiefs faction that the Night of Champions war against Solo can face. But the long game theory's most resonant expression arrives in exactly this context, because the moment when Zilla's actual allegiance is most dramatically revealed, the moment of maximum competitive impact, the moment when the ambiguity resolves, is the Night of Champions match. The Tribal Chief defending against Solo Sikoa with the first family assembled around him and Zilla Fatu on the apron. The moment when the most important question of the Bloodline saga's current chapter gets its answer: does Zilla stand with Roman when it matters most? Or does the Night of Champions stage provide the most significant possible backdrop for the pivot that the long game theory has been predicting? Jacob Fatu as enforcer on the Roman side. Zilla Fatu potentially pivoting to stand with his brother at the most dramatically impactful available moment. Two Fatu brothers, reunited, against the table that Roman built, on the Night of Champions stage, with the World Heavyweight Championship and the Tribal Chief's authority at stake. That version of Night of Champions is the most extraordinary premium live event scenario the current landscape can produce, and Zilla's backstage sightings have just made it considerably more than theoretical. The Seth Rollins dark promise operating in the background of all of this is the element that makes the Night of Champions analytical picture most genuinely uncertain. Because a first family member who has promised revenge on the faction's leader, operating within the faction structure, present at Night of Champions in whatever capacity his first family membership places him, is the most unpredictable variable in any competitive configuration Roman assembles for the premium live event. Every Night of Champions scenario that involves Rollins in a first family support capacity now carries the specific, charged, completely unresolved question of whether the dark promise's execution arrives on that night. Does the architect choose Night of Champions when Roman is most operationally committed to the championship defense, when the First Family's resources are most fully deployed, when the Tribal Chief's attention is most divided between the championship match's competitive demands and the faction's management obligations, as the optimal moment for the Dark Promises delivery? Roman managing Solo or LA Knight in a championship match while Seth Rollins' Dark Promise is operating unresolved in the First Family's structure is the most dangerous competitive position the Tribal Chief has occupied, and adding Zilla Fatu's debut to that environment, with all the unresolved loyalty questions his presence carries, makes Night of Champions the most genuinely unpredictable WWE Premium Live event on the current calendar. Zilla Fatu is coming. The backstage sightings confirm the imminence. Night of Champions has two credible opponents waiting for Roman Reigns in Solo Sikoa and LA Knight. The First Family is at its most structurally complex and its most institutionally pressured, and the Bloodline saga, which has been producing the most consistently extraordinary professional wrestling storytelling of the post-WrestleMania period, is heading towards a Night of Champions with more unresolved questions and more genuine competitive uncertainty than any previous chapter of the saga has generated. Who challenges Roman at Night of Champions? Solo Sikoa's war or LA Knight's frustrated ambition? Does Zilla stand with Roman or pivot to Jacob at the most dramatic possible moment? Does Seth Rollins' Dark Promise arrive at Night of Champions, or is the promise being saved for a subsequent stage? Comment your predictions. The questions are extraordinary, the answers are coming, and Wrestling Stands will be here for every development between now and Night of Champions. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one.